extremely cold in my studio, and I didn't get a heater out here until very late, so it's only been in here a couple hours, which is why I am very bundled. Hi, even gloves. And I'm doing a story today on someone who came to prominence in the 60s, mostly. So I did a little bit of a Twiggy look. Do you like it? She was very pouty, but anyway. I gotta pick something for a thumbnail. Okay, that out of the way. Here we go. More cinema history, you're welcome. Born 3 months premature on February 20th, 1927, in Miami, Florida, which earned him U.S. citizenship, Sidney Poitier was the youngest of 7 children of Bahamian tomato farmers Reginald James Poitier and Evelyn Oughton. Being so premature, Sidney was not expected to live past a couple of days, and his mother Evelyn desperately searched all of Miami for anyone who would help her. And she even went to a fortune teller, and the fortune teller would tell her not to worry about her son, that he would not be a sickly child, and that he would go on to walk with kings, step on pillars of gold, and carry her name to many places. What a prediction. Around the age of 3 months, he was finally well enough to go home, and his family resided on Cat Island in the Bahamas. They had no running water or electricity. They were very poor. And Sidney did not see an automobile until the age of 10, when his family moved to the Bahamian capital city of Nassau? I didn't look up how they pronounce it. The tomato business on Cat Island had failed, and his father Reginald took up cab driving as an occupation in the capital city. When Sidney was 15 years old, he would move to Miami to live with a brother, and within a year he was in New York City with $3 to his name and a dream to become an actor. Up to his relocation in the United States, the young man had no concept of people being anything other than people. There were 2 white people on Cat Island where he grew up, and there really was no racial tension there. It just didn't exist. So he had no idea what awaited him in the United States. When he arrived in New York, he worked as a dishwasher, and he auditioned for the American Negro Theater. Do not come at me. That is how they referred to themselves, so I am just relaying the facts. At that time, however, Sidney was functionally illiterate, and he was rejected by the theater. He returned to his job as a dishwasher, very discouraged, and at one point he was sitting with a newspaper, and an elderly Jewish waiter at that restaurant came up to him and asked him what was new. And at that point, Sidney admitted that he could not read and could not tell him what was new. And this waiter offered to read with him that night, and he continued to do so for weeks, every night, after the restaurant had closed, and that is how Sidney learned how to read. In November of 1943, still just 16 years old, Sidney, like many other young men at the time, would lie about his age and enlist in the Army. He was assigned to work in the psychiatric ward of the VA hospital in Northport, New York, but he was so disturbed and upset by the poor treatment of the patients there. I'm sure we are all aware of how well mental patients were treated back in the day, and even today. He feigned mental illness himself in order to get a Section 8 discharge from the Army, and in his evaluation to obtain the discharge, he ended up confessing that he did not, in fact, have any kind of mental illness, but the psychiatrist that was attending had sympathy on him, and he granted the discharge anyway. After obtaining this discharge, Sidney once again returned to dishwashing and auditioning on the stage. He finally landed a spot, now that he could read, with the American Negro Theater, but unfortunately, because of his very thick Bahamian accent, the audiences didn't really care for him. He also was not a great singer, as most of his fellow actors were, so that was kind of a notch against him as well. So for months, Sidney would work to model his speech pattern and accent after a radio personality of the day named Norman Brokenshire. Brokenshire? Brokenshire. Brokenshire. One word. Okay. Who was known at the time as Sir Silkenspeech. Sidney's hard work paid off, and he was given the lead role in the Broadway production of Lysistrata, which is the ancient Greek comedy about the women of Greece withholding sex from their partners in the hopes of ending the Peloponnesian War. It's a great play, but his turn in the role lasted 4 days. The production, it kind of flopped, so that's unfortunate. But because of his work in it, he did well, at least. I guess it didn't flop because of him. He was given an understudy position for the play Anna Lucasta. In 1947, Sidney would help found the Committee for the Negro in the Arts, which was an egalitarian organization focused on analysis of class and racial exploitation. He would continue acting on the stage for a couple years, and then in 1949, he was offered a role in the Darryl F. Zanuck film No Way Home, playing a doctor who was in the very uncomfortable position of having to treat a racist patient, played by Richard Widmark, who would become a good friend of his after that. It was his second film and first credited role. He had just like a bit part background character in one film prior. The film industry took immediate notice of this new talent. On April 29th of 1950, Sidney would marry his first wife, Juanita Hardy. They would go on to have 4 daughters, Beverly, Pamela, Sherry, and Gina. Gina preceded him in death at the age of 57 in 2018. And the family lived in Stuyvesant, New York. In 1951, Sidney would travel to South Africa to film Cry the Beloved Country, playing a minister alongside Canada Lee in the search of a runaway boy and dealing with the societal impact of apartheid. He was later cast as a high school student in Blackboard Jungle, and then came the role after which Sidney could not be ignored. He played longshoreman Tommy Tyler in the 1957 drama Edge of the City. Tommy befriends another dock worker, a white man named Axel, played by John Cassavetes, who is hiding something, and this secret leads to tragedy. In 1958, Sidney starred alongside Tony Curtis in The Defiant Ones, earning himself an Academy Award nomination, the first ever for a black actor in the Best Actor category. He returned to the stage in the debut of A Raisin in the Sun in 1959 and would later reprise his role in the film, for which he was nominated for a Golden Globe. The story was about a black family in Chicago, and the play had drawn more black Americans to the theater than ever before. Also in 1959, Sidney would appear in Porgy and Bess, the film. There was a previous play in the 30s, alongside Dorothy Dandridge, a role he had wanted to avoid because he felt it had far too many stereotypes. He inevitably agreed in order to appear in The Defiant Ones, a role he had actually wanted to do. The producer of both, Sam Goldwyn, had also threatened to get Sidney blacklisted if he didn't sign on to play Porgy. Under such conditions, he chose to play in it in order to have more opportunities to do good with his platform in the future. So Sam Goldwyn's kind of scummy. He was the producer of both projects and would not cast Sidney in The Defiant Ones if he did not play Porgy, but also it was Sidney's agent that told him that if he did not play in Porgy and Bess, that Sam Goldwyn intended on making sure he never worked in Hollywood again. But in a contractual move that likely never bothered Sidney, the rights to the film Porgy and Bess passed from Goldwyn back to the Gershwin estate, as the Gershwin brothers had written the original play, and the estate has mostly kept the film under wraps because apparently they did not care for the adaptation, and they regained the rights in 1974, so it's barely been seen since. Also, there are rumors of 2 separate Gershwin estates, one for each brother, one for Ira, one for George, and apparently the estates don't really get along, or they just can't agree on contractual terms, so yeah. However, the film was well received at the time of its release, and it earned Poitier yet another Oscar nomination for Best Actor in a Musical or Comedy. So there's that. It was a good move for his career overall, and that was a compromise he took and learned from. Also in 1959, Poitier began a 9-year affair with Diane Carroll, who had been a supporting actor in Porgy and Bess. According to Carroll, Sidney had persuaded her to divorce her husband, a music manager named Monty Kay, saying he would also get a divorce from Juanita. Diane followed through on her end, but it took Sidney until 1965 to divorce Juanita, and when Diane and Sidney could not come to an agreement on living arrangements or a timeline for when they would marry, the relationship crumbled. It just seemed to fizzle out, and kind of sounds like some kind of commitment issue on Sidney's end if Carol's version of events is totally accurate, which I don't know why it wouldn't be. I'm not saying she's lying, but it's a he said, she said situation. I don't know that he ever denied what she said, though. Actually, that didn't come up in what I found. But anyway, the relationship fizzled out in the 60s, and that was that. Throughout the 60s, Sidney was getting the most steady work in lead roles of any black actor at the time, and his roles were almost exclusively quiet, noble, stereotype breakers. In 1967, he would say, "If the fabric of society were different, I would scream to high heaven to play villains and to deal with different images of Negro life that would be more dimensional. But I'll be damned if I do that at this stage of the game. Not when there is only one Negro actor working in films with any degree of consistency." It was an unfair position for a creative person to be in, to have to be the representative of his entire race to the public, to break down racial barriers. But life for black people in America in the 60s wasn't exactly fair either. Sidney knew the importance of his platform and that it was crucial to his career to not give ammunition to the ignorant by playing characters that would be easy to hate or demonize. In 1963, he starred in Lilies of the Field. It's a film about sort of a traveling handyman living out of his car who is sort of harangued into building a chapel for a group of nuns in the middle of nowhere. It's cute. You should watch it. He was awarded the Oscar for Best Actor, first obviously for a black actor. He was proud, but his sense of accomplishment was undercut by being thus far typecast as something of a token for the film industry. He felt like the film industry was kind of patting themselves on the back a little bit, like, look at what we've done. We've given this black man a platform, and isn't it nice? He would go on to say later that he understood the reasoning and that he appreciated the filmmakers who were earnestly trying to break racial stereotypes and barriers. Well, not so much stereotypes, but barriers with the stories that they told involving Sidney. And he chose those roles very carefully. I don't remember the name of the other film that he hadn't wanted to do, but the only films he did not really care for that he did were Porgy and Bess and this one other one. So he would say no. If he did not like the message that was sent, or he felt like it would be injurious to black people in America and race relations, he would absolutely refuse it. And so of course he wanted more varied, interesting roles, but he knew he was at a very crucial point in film history, and that he was really the only one out there, and he could not afford. He knew people would be coming after him. Not not chasing him down, although he was victim of bigotry, obviously, but other minority actors coming up after him, following in his footsteps and climbing the ladder that he built for them. In 1964, Sidney recorded a spoken word album reciting the works of Plato. And in 1965, he appeared in 3 films: The Bedford Incident about the Cold War, The Greatest Story Ever Told, a biblical epic, and A Patch of Blue, in which his character befriends and helps a poor blind girl he meets at the local park. I've seen that one, it's lovely. But sad. It's good and sad. It has kind of a happy ending though. Anyway, it deals with some pretty heavy topics, put it that way. Sidney's peak year, arguably, in film performance was 1967, with the releases of To Sir with Love, In the Heat of the Night, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. In To Sir with Love, he plays teacher Mark Thackeray, working in an inner city, secondary, or high school in London. The film was met with mixed reviews, but his performance, he was roundly praised. As Philadelphia detective Virgil Tibbs in the crime drama In the Heat of the Night, he helps a Mississippi town, a very racist town, and sheriff solve a murder. And in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, he plays a young widower, Dr. Prentice, looking to marry a white girl, the daughter of 2 white people, played by Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, and he's determined to get their approval before marrying her. He absolutely refuses to marry her if they do not approve, because there's already going to be barriers to their relationship at that time, just because of the stigma. And also, in 1967, interracial marriage was still illegal in 17 states. So that's a little more than a stigma. So in the film, he knows they are going to have a lot of difficulty, and they probably will not get through it if her parents don't approve. He doesn't want to drive a wedge between her and her family, and it would just be one more thing that they would have to deal with being an interracial couple in the 60s. I love that movie. It makes me cry and laugh. It's wonderful. There's a great speech in it that Sidney Poitier's character gives to his father, and Sidney had said it meant a great deal to him, that speech, and he remembered it for the rest of his life. It's a good movie. You should see that one too. There's a really cute scene having to do with ice cream. That seems very silly, but just watch it and you'll know what I'm talking about if you haven't seen it already. After years of being typecast as the squeaky clean, idealized African American, Sidney moved behind the camera, making his directorial debut in 1972 with a western, Buck and the Preacher. He also starred in it, co-starred with Harry Belafonte, and he also acted in and directed Uptown Saturday Night in 1974 with Bill Cosby and Harry Belafonte. His most successful turn as director was in 1980 with the comedy Stir Crazy with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder. Great movie. It remained the highest grossing film directed by a person of African descent for many years, and he would direct 9 films altogether, Ghost Dad of 1990 being his last. That was another Bill Cosby film. We're not gonna retcon Bill Cosby in here, but hey, nobody knew at the time. Awkward. In 1974, Sidney was named an honorary Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II. In 1976, Sir Sidney Poitier would marry the woman who would remain his wife until his passing just this past January 6th, Joanna Shimkus. She had starred with him in the 1969 film The Lost Man. They would go on to have 2 daughters, Anika, I'm not sure. Or Annika. And Sidney, a daughter, spelled Sydney, as opposed to his Sidney. In the 80s and up to 2001, he continued acting, and he appeared in several TV movies, including the 1996 To Sir with Love 2, reprising his role as the now on the brink of retirement Mark Thackeray. Lulu and Judy Geeson also reprised their roles for a farewell party scene in the film. In 1981, he received a Golden Globe Cecil B. DeMille Award. In 1986, he was given an honorary doctorate of fine arts from the University of Miami. In 1992, he received a Life Achievement Award from the American Film Institute. In 1994, he got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. In 1995, he received the Kennedy Center honor. And from 1995 to 2003, Poitier served as a member on the board of directors of the Walt Disney Company. In April 1997, Poitier was appointed the ambassador from the Bahamas to Japan, and in 2002 from the Bahamas to the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO. And he served in both roles concurrently until 2007. In 2002, Poitier also received the 2001 Honorary Academy Award for his overall contribution to American cinema, and when Denzel Washington that year won the Oscar for Best Actor for his role in Training Day, he acknowledged Poitier in his acceptance speech, saying, "I'll always be chasing you, Sidney. I'll always be following in your footsteps. There's nothing I would rather do, sir." In 2009, President Barack Obama presented Sir Sidney Poitier with the Presidential Medal of Freedom and said of him that he had advanced the nation's dialogue on race and respect and opened doors for a generation of actors. Sidney wrote 3 autobiographical works: This Life, published in 1980, The Measure of a Man, a spiritual biography, in 2000, and Life Beyond Measure, Letters to My Great-Granddaughter, in 2008, which sounds perfectly lovely. He also wrote a novel entitled Montaro Kane, which was published in May of 2013. And he was the subject of the biography, Sidney Poitier, Man, Actor, Icon, in 2004 by historian Aram Goudsouzian. AramGoudsouzian. I'm just going to go with Goudsouzian. Goudsouzian? I don't know. In an October 2000 interview with Oprah, of the bigotry he witnessed and experienced throughout his life and career, he said, "The big picture is that racism has been an awful experience, but there are other experiences. We need to keep an eye on the other human experiences to give ourselves the fullness and the breadth of our own humanity. Our humanity is served back to us through the eyes of those who have diminished us, and they serve back to us a view of ourselves that is incomplete. If we don't look to the bigger picture, our view will narrow to that which is constantly fed to us." He was a sensitive soul who believed deeply in the miracle of all life, spending time contemplating his childhood pastime of killing frogs and insects, and coming to the conclusion that creation was too wondrous for him to spend time destroying any part of it. Also in the Oprah interview, he would speak of the gift of his mother's support and the expectations of his father. He had set his father Reginald always before him as the standard bearer for the sort of man he ought to be, and Evelyn's ever-present influence was like a voice in his ear, even long after she had been gone. Oprah asked him what was that expectation of his parents, and he replied, "To walk through my life as my own man, I'd seen my father. He was a poor man, and I watched him do astonishing things. Of his father's work ethic in Nassau, he said, "It was hard because there, if you had nothing, you got no respect." Yet he never lost his dignity. I would like to think that he lived up to those expectations. Rest in peace, sir.
Those schoolgirl days of telling tales and biting nails are gone, but in my mind I know they will still live on and on. But how do you thank someone who has taken you from crayons to perfume? It isn't easy, but I'll try. If you wanted the sky, I would write across the sky in letters that would soar 1,000 feet high. To Sir with love. The time has come for closing books, and long last looks must end. And as I leave, I know that I am leaving my best friend, a friend who taught me right from wrong and weak from strong. That's a lot to learn. What can I give you in return? If you wanted the moon, I would try to make a start, but I would rather you let me give my heart to Sir with love. That was To Sir with Love from the film of the same name. It was written by Don Black and Mark London. My eye is like blurry on this side, so I was saying Landon, but Mark London for the film, obviously, and it was sung by Lulu, who was playing a student in the film. And it's wonderful. I love it. I love that movie, and I hope you enjoyed the story and the song, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.
Miami, Florida, which earned him U.S. citizenship. Shut up, Rocky. Up to his Also in 1999, but he inevitably agreed to play in it in order to be able to be in. After years of being typecast as the squeaky clean, idealized Afrin, the nasals. Never mind, okay.